data science initiatives. And to be honest with you, to me, that's the least important. It's not even a money thing at this point. There's so much money, but they have to do, and they have to move quickly. When the alternative is that nothing bad can happen, let's do it now. I was just saying to Bobby and the group, let's do it now. Nothing bad can happen. It can only good happen. But with Tylenol, don't take it. Don't take it. And if you can't live, if your fever is so bad, you have to take one because there's no alternative to that. Sadly, first question, what can you take instead? It's actually, there's not an alternative to that. And as you know, other of the medicines are absolutely proven bad. I mean, they've been proven bad with the aspirins and the Advils and others, right? And they've been proven bad. So I'd like to ask Bobby to get up to the podium and say a few words, and then Dr. Bhattacharya and Dr. McCary, Dr. Oz, Dr. Fink, followed by two incredible mothers that have experienced firsthand what this country is going through, what parts of the world are going through. And I will say there are parts of the world that don't take Tylenol. I mean, there's a rumor, and I don't know if it's so or not, that Cuba, they don't have Tylenol because they don't have the money for Tylenol, and they have virtually no autism, okay? Tell me about that one. And there are other parts of the world where they don't have Tylenol, where they don't have autism. That tells you a lot. And I want to say it right now. And, you know, the way I look at it, don't take it. Don't take it. There's no downside in not taking it. So I'd like to ask Bobby to come up and say a few words. I hope I didn't ruin his day, but that's the way I feel. I've been very strong on the subject for a long time. You know, life is common sense, too. And there's a lot of common sense in this, and I wish things like this were brought up, and this group has worked so hard on it, but I'd like to be a little bit more, a little speedier in the process of a recommendation, because there's no harm in going quicker. There's absolutely no harm. At worst, there's no harm. Thank you very much. Bobby, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. To meet the President's challenge, I ordered HHS to launch an unprecedented all-agency effort to identify all causes of autism, including toxic and pharmaceutical exposures. At President Trump's urging, NIH, FDA, CDC, and CMS are turning over every stone to identify the etiology of the autism epidemic and how patients and parents can prevent and reverse this alarming trend. We have broken down the traditional silos that have long separated these agencies, and we have fast-tracked research and guidance. Historically, NIH has focused almost solely on politically safe and entirely fruitless research about the genetic drivers of autism. And that would be like studying the genetic drivers of lung cancer without looking at cigarettes. And that's what NIH has been doing for 20 years. As a result, we don't have an answer to this critical question, despite the cataclysmic impact of the epidemic on our nation's children. We are now replacing the institutional culture of politicized science and corruption with evidence-based medicine.
It is 10 o'clock. You are listening to a news conference from the White House. This is about the taking of Tylenol or paracetamol during pregnancy. It is also throwing into doubt how vaccines are taken and when. So let's continue then to listen to JFK Jr.
We are announcing two important findings from our autism work that are vital for parents to know as they make these decisions. First, HHS will act on acetaminophen. The FDA is responding to clinical and laboratory studies that suggest a potential association between acetaminophen used during pregnancy and adverse neurodevelopmental outcomes, including later diagnosis for ADHD and autism. Scientists have proposed biological mechanisms linking prenatal acetaminophen exposure to altered brain development. We have also evaluated the contrary studies that show no association. Today, the FDA will issue a physician's notice about the risk of acetaminophen during pregnancy and begin the process to initiate a safety label change. HHS will launch a nationwide public service campaign to inform families and protect public health. FDA also recognized that acetaminophen is often the only tool for fevers and pain in pregnancy, as other alternatives have well-documented adverse effects. HHS wants, therefore, to encourage clinicians to exercise their best judgment in the use of acetaminophen for fevers and pain in pregnancy by prescribing the lowest effective dose for the shortest necessary duration and only when treatment is required. Furthermore, thanks also to the politicization of science, the safety of acetaminophen against the risk of neurodevelopmental disorders in young children has never been validated. Prudent medicine, therefore, suggests caution in acetaminophen use by young children, especially since strong evidence also has associated it with liver toxicity. Some studies have also found the use of acetaminophen in children can potentially prolong viral illnesses. FDA will drive new research to safeguard mothers, children, and families. In addition to a possible acetaminophen connection to autism for pregnant women, infants, and toddlers, our research has revealed that folate deficiency in a child's brain can lead to autism. We have also identified an exciting therapy that may benefit large numbers of children who suffer from autism. Peer-reviewed literature has documented that up to 60% of folate-deficient children with ASD can have improved verbal communications if given leucovorin. I have instructed NIH, FDA, and CMS to help doctors treat children appropriately. Jay will help tell that story, which started with sound science, the kind that restores faith in government. This announcement also represents a historic collaboration between NIH, FDA, CDC, and CMS. We expect this to be the first of many announcements over the coming years that deliver actionable information to parents on underlying cause of autism and the potential paths for prevention and reversal. Finally, autism is a complex disorder with multifactorial etiology. We are continuing to investigate a multiplicity of potential causes with no areas of taboo. One area that we are closely examining, as the president mentioned, is vaccines. Some 40 to 70% of mothers who have children with autism believe that their child was injured by a vaccine. President Trump believes that we should be listening to these mothers instead of gaslighting and marginalizing them like prior administrations. Some of our friends like to say that we should believe all women. But some of these same people have been silencing and demonizing these mothers for 3 decades. Because research on...
So let's bring in our science and technology editor, Tom Clark, an extremely significant intervention into medicines we're hearing there from the US Health Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., not only about the use of paracetamol, but also about how vaccines are taken, Tom.
Extremely significant because it lacks any evidence to support the claims that have just been made in that room. And I think there will be public health experts, autism experts, and an awful lot, 5 million families living with autism in America, made quite angry by this intervention. Because let's just have a look at some of the details we heard there. Donald Trump suggested that there's no autism in the Amish population in America, which is demonstrably false. I've just looked it up, and it's lower than in the general population, probably due to how the Amish community report autism, given they don't have the same access to healthcare as a lot of other populations. He said there was no autism in Cuba, which is also not true. There were suggestions, and you've heard this obviously many times before, about a link between vaccines and autism, which there was a suggestion there, and this is a common theme from RFK Jr.'s Department of Health, that somehow there's a conspiracy among scientists to sort of block out debate and science and other things. There was a huge amount of work done to investigate the proposed link between vaccines and autism, and no evidence for that found. And it's on evidence that science is based, right? It's not about what you feel, it's about what the evidence shows. And you know, it is very true that a lot of mothers of children with autism might worry that it was the vaccine that caused it. Donald Trump there, RFK Jr. there saying 40 to 70% of mothers worrying that. But the evidence doesn't support that. And in so doing, I think this is quite a worrying development, given the potential harms that might result. The one thing I think that RFK Jr. did say that was accurate is that autism is a spectrum disorder with likely multiple causes. His ambition when he went into office, claiming he'd want to find the cause, the reasons for autism within 5 months. This is not something the scientific community has been ignoring. I mean, it's worked on at an enormous length, and it's not clear that there is a single cause. There's multiple genes associated with it. It's a spectrum disorder, unlikely to have a single cause. And what's remarkable about this announcement is they've settled on the one thing, which I think there's pretty good evidence is not an important driver of autism rates, and that is the use of acetaminophen, as they call it in America, paracetamol, we call it here, one of the most commonly used medicines in the world. And despite some studies suggesting a correlation between the two things, the best studies and the largest ones have found no evidence, which is why the health authorities in America up until now and across the rest of the world recommend it as the only safe medicine that women should use during pregnancy.
Yes, absolutely. And that has been critical for pregnant women, that they're allowed to take paracetamol. The British health regulator, the MHRA, as you were suggesting, saying there remains no evidence linking the use of paracetamol during pregnancy with autism, and that it continues to recommend it for pain relief. But he also threw into question there the use of paracetamol for children as well, and that is also a very critical means of getting temperature down in youngsters.
It's a remarkable deviation from what we expected them to talk about, which was links to autism. I think the community's pretty much settled on the fact autism is something that children are born with. It often doesn't manifest itself until further along their development, but I don't think there's any evidence to support the use of acetaminophen in children is linked to autism. So there are understandable concerns in America with an over-medicalised country that takes too many pills. But this isn't the way of going about getting on top of that. If you wanted to concern yourself with the harms of paracetamol, for example, you could look at the more than 1,000 cases of liver failure in America every year due to the overuse or overdose from paracetamol, unconnected with its use in pregnancy, by the way, the 500 deaths that causes. If you're concerned about the health and life of children, you might want to look at the leading cause of child death in America, which is guns. But understandably, that's not something this administration is particularly vocal about. It's absolutely remarkable. And I think any doctor watching this, that includes, I would imagine, nearly every doctor in America would wonder how they're supposed to treat potentially life-threatening fever in a child without using something that lowers it, that's a safe and well-tolerated drug, if not given in too high doses, like paracetamol.
Tom, as I said, a hugely significant moment for a government to do, the US government intervening in the world of medicine in so many different ways. Tom Clark, thank you.
Anna, thank you. I'm Yalda Hakim, live in New York. And France has tonight joined a growing number of countries recognizing Palestinian statehood. President Macron said the declaration was part of his commitment to peace between the Israelis and Palestinians. The UK, Canada and Australia have also recognized the state of Palestine, which has been angrily criticized by Israel. Here's our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn.
I declare that today, France recognizes the state of Palestine.
This was a major moment. France leading the way at the UN, recognizing Palestine. Britain's Foreign Secretary here too to witness it, after her Prime Minister did the same over the weekend. In London, cheers as Palestine's flag went up over its new embassy.
This is undoubtedly historic, but will it make any difference? Israel says it will retaliate against any further recognition of a Palestinian state. But Britain, like others, says it helps the chances of peace because it gives Palestinians something to hope for.
Before the debate, sponsored by both France and Saudi Arabia, Israel denounced it as a circus.
This is a theater because we all know that it's detached from reality. While Macron and his colleagues will celebrate 48 hostages who will stay in captivity in Gaza.
But Britain and others say Israel has brought this upon itself by working to reverse any chance of a Palestinian state being created, and with it a two-state peaceful solution to the conflict. Tolerating relentless Jewish settler outrages on the West Bank that have killed Palestinians and torched their homes and businesses, often with the apparent connivance of the Israeli military, and refusing to accept a ceasefire in Gaza, where tens of thousands of civilians have been killed. Irish Taoiseach Micheál Martin fears recognising Palestine might not be enough.
We consistently condemn the atrocities of Hamas on October the 7th, the slaughter of innocents there, and the decision to take hostages, which is a war crime, and the failure to release hostages. And Hamas should release all of the hostages. But this phase of the war, it's a war against a people. It has all the hallmarks of an ethnic cleansing.
Donald Trump is supporting his ally Israel, disagreeing on the matter with Prime Minister Keir Starmer when they met in Chequers last week. The White House condemned today's recognition of Palestine as a backwards move.
He spoke about that in the UK, standing right next to his friend, Prime Minister Starmer. And he feels this does not do anything to release the hostages, which is the primary goal right now in Gaza, does nothing to end this conflict and bring this war to a close. And frankly, he believes it's a reward to Hamas.
President Trump speaks here tomorrow. But whatever he says, the number of countries opposing the idea of a Palestinian state at the UN is dwindling, whether Israel likes it or not. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, New York.
And we've got Dom here with me live. And Dom, when you speak to the Israelis, they sort of say this is the world that's removed from reality and we're taking on an enemy that we have to eliminate. But frankly, what it feels like is increasingly Israel is being isolated.
Yeah, what they say, though, is that what happened in the hall over there just now was a circus, was a theatre, that it was performative, and they're backed up by the White House on that. And what they're saying is that Britain and France and other countries are kind of going through the motions, but they can't answer any of the questions about, where is this state? What are its borders? Who's running it? Is there a map? Is there a sense of who will be held responsible for the extremists within Palestine if it's going to be recognised by these countries? All these questions are very problematic, but if you talk to Western diplomats, you talk to British diplomats, they've just lost patience with Israel. There's a war in Gaza, as you put very forcefully to Danny Danon, the Israeli ambassador here, that even senior Israeli commanders have no idea how it will end and have no idea really how they can carry on with this war, what it will achieve. And then in the West Bank, you have Jewish extremist settlers running amok, effectively, killing, Palestinians, torching their homes, ripping up olive trees, often with the connivance of the Israeli military. And all of that, British and French and other diplomats believe, is a deliberate attempt to sabotage the idea of a Palestinian state. Now, that's something that Benjamin Netanyahu has never agreed should actually exist, but the two-state solution is fundamental to Western diplomacy in the Middle East. It's the only plan that anyone believes has a chance of working, even if that chance is so remote. So to see the Israeli government actively trying to stop that happening has led to these Western diplomats and governments believing there's no other course to do. They say they gave the Israelis the chance of going for a ceasefire in Gaza, and to show they wanted to make some progress towards a Palestinian state, and the fact they failed to do so has meant they've had to come up with this. But it is a very problematic move by these countries. It's more than symbolic, and there is a sense now that, as you say, Israel is more and more isolated. Where we were here a year ago, and we saw Israel use its military force to kill Hassan Nasrallah. Since then, it's used it against the Iranians with devastating impact. It has emerged as a sort of all-powerful military force in the Middle East, but you can't achieve your policy goals just through military force if you don't pursue creative and meaningful diplomacy. And so they're caught in this difficult position now of being sort of isolated diplomatically, very powerful in a military sense, and in a neighbourhood as difficult and problematic as the Middle East. That is an uncomfortable place to be.
Yeah, indeed. Dom, thank you so much. And As we were saying there, you saw Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danon, in Dom's report. I interviewed him about an hour ago. Just have a listen.
Well, it wasn't a summit, it was a theater, it was a show, detached from reality. While we still have 48 hostages in the dungeons in Gaza, we saw President Macron celebrating here. We know it's not going to promote anything on the ground. It's empty declarations, will not promote peace. On the contrary, it actually encouraged terrorism. I saw the statement of Hamas praising this conference, and I saw the statement of the Hamas saying that the fruit of October 7th are those declarations. So we will continue to focus on bringing the hostages back and eliminating Hamas and creating a new reality without Hamas in Gaza. Well, maybe it's about domestic interest of President Macron in France that he doesn't want to address, so he comes to the UN. But you know, so many leaders spoke about an era without Hamas, or disarmament of Hamas. And I want to ask them, who is actually going to take care of that? Maybe the statement will influence Hamas, or a letter from the Elysee Palace that will come to Gaza. It's ridiculous. We all know that the only one who is actually fighting Hamas is us. The responsibility is on our shoulders to remove Hamas from the equation and create a better reality, not only for Israelis, but for the Palestinians themselves. There is no future for the Palestinian if Hamas will stay in control. We can all agree about that. But coming here, putting this show, you know, it's ridiculous.
That was Danny Danon, Israel's ambassador to the UN, and we're going to have full coverage of the UN General Assembly meeting here on Sky News over the next couple of days. The highlight tomorrow, President Donald Trump addresses the Assembly. That's one you're not going to want to miss, so stay with us for all of that. But that's all from me and the team here in New York. I'll hand back to you now, Anna, in the studio.
Yalda, thank you. A growing list of charities have cut ties with the Duchess of York after it emerged she sent an email to paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein apologising for publicly disowning him. Among the charities to drop Sarah Ferguson is the Teenage Cancer Trust, which has worked with her for 35 years. Well, the Duchess says that she was taken in by Epstein's lies, but the revelations and the fallout will be a source of embarrassment to the royal family. Here's our correspondent, Molly Malone.
Pictured driving from Windsor this morning, moments after her ex-husband, and hours later, the Duchess of York was to be dropped as patron to multiple charities, after messages emerged that she'd sent to the convicted paedophile and financier Jeffrey Epstein. In a statement, the children's charity Julia's House Hospice said, following the information shared this weekend on the Duchess of York's correspondence with Jeffrey Epstein, Julia's House has taken the decision that it would be inappropriate for her to continue as a patron of the charity. What followed was many others doing the same, all distancing themselves from the Duchess, including the Teenage Cancer Trust, who Sarah Ferguson had been working with for more than 3 decades. After her own experience of cancer, she'd made a surprise appearance in the spring at a reception held at Buckingham Palace to celebrate cancer organisations. It was seen as an acknowledgement that she was firmly back in the royal fold. Last week, she was seen with the rest of the family for the Duchess of Kent's funeral. Days later, reports emerged of an email from Ferguson's private account to Jeffrey Epstein, appearing to grovel for publicly calling him a paedophile, saying that he was a supreme friend. Sarah Ferguson had been given £15,000 by Epstein. She'd said in an interview that accepting the money was a gigantic error of judgment, that she abhors paedophilia, before then emailing him to apologise. Her spokesperson now says she was blackmailed and taken in by his lies. In a statement, they said her first thoughts are with his victims. As soon as she was aware of the extent of the allegations against him, she not only cut off contact, but condemned him publicly, to the extent he then threatened to sue her for defamation for associating him with paedophilia. Buckingham Palace haven't commented, not entirely surprising, as she hasn't been a working royal for some time. For years, it's been her ex-husband, Prince Andrew, who's had the most difficult questions to answer regarding his connections to Epstein. He's always denied any wrongdoing. The Duke of York was notably absent from Donald Trump's state visit, but images of Epstein were not, projected on the side of Windsor Castle. An uncomfortable and unwelcome reminder for a family and an institution that remains haunted by a convicted paedophile. Molly Malone, Sky News.
Well, Sky's Sajid Chowdhury joins us live from Buckingham Palace. Sajid, problems for the Duchess, but also a real problem for the royal family more broadly.
Yes, well, look, Sarah Ferguson hasn't been a working member of the royal family for a very long time. And despite all of these fancy titles and high-profile roles that she seems to have had with charities, she's actually just the ex-wife of a non-working member of the royal family. But nonetheless, this is an awkward situation for the palace, an unwanted and unwelcomed distraction, because no matter who she is or was previously married to, Sarah Ferguson clearly is still very close to the royal family. She was pictured just last week right alongside Prince Andrew at that funeral in Westminster Cathedral. And actually, if we look at last week and look at this week, we can see the impact that this story has on the royal family. So last week, deemed to be a very successful week for the royal family, they hosted President Trump at that state banquet, glittering, smiling. It was a very classic British sort of made-for-television diplomatic visit. And then this week, today, in fact, the king has been on 2 royal visits, and I bet you couldn't name any of those 2 visits. And that is because this sort of hangover, if you will, of the Prince Andrew Epstein sort of saga continues to massively overshadow the king's royal engagements and his charitable work. I'll tell you, one of the visits that the king made today was to a town in Cumbria to talk about national defence. That's sort of a really important topic right now for the head of state to be involved with, especially in this current climate. But yet, that's not what we're here outside Buckingham Palace tonight for. Instead, the story is once again Jeffrey Epstein.
Sajid, thank you. The Jimmy Kimmel Show is to return to US TV. It was pulled after the host was accused of making ill-timed and insensitive comments following the death of Charlie Kirk. But tonight, the Walt Disney Corporation announced a U-turn. Well, let's bring in our correspondent, David Blevins. And this raised all sorts of questions about free speech, David.
Yes, it's only a few days since Jimmy Kimmel, who's been part of America's nighttime routine for 20 years, Anna, was pulled off air by ABC following controversial remarks he made during a monologue in relation to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. It did spark a national debate about free speech. Barack Obama described it as government coercion. And Donald Trump himself appeared to suggest shortly afterwards that television networks could lose their licenses for not supporting him. But tonight in a statement, Disney has said they took the decision to avoid inflaming a situation at a very tense moment for America. They'd had what they described as thoughtful conversations with Jimmy Kimmel and said he would be returning to air tomorrow evening. I think it is worth reflecting also that there was controversy because of the timing around all of this and the sensitivity of that. Nexstar, the largest owner of local television companies in America, were first to say they wouldn't show this programme, and that forced ABC to act. But of course, Nexstar is awaiting government approval for a $6.2 billion acquisition of the second largest TV company in America, and it was the Trump-appointed TV regulator who said companies could do this the easy way or the hard way. So lots of questions remain, but we do have the answer to one. Jimmy Kimmel will be back on air tomorrow night.
David, thank you. So Ed Davey has refused to rule out working with Labour to stop Nigel Farage and Reform UK from forming a government after the next election. The Lib Dem leader was speaking to our political editor, Beth Rigby, ahead of his main speech to his party's conference tomorrow.
So if you start off with a bit of foliage. Flower arranging in sunny Bournemouth. This the perfect photo opportunity for a politician trying to appeal to Middle England.
Right, you want to look at my lovely yellow rose?
After a record win in last year's general election, Ed Davey's Lib Dems now struggling to cut through. As Reform pulls ahead in the polls, is it time for progressives to gather together?
Do you identify more with Keir Starmer or Nigel Farage?
Well, I want to identify with Liberal Democrats and our values and our policies, but I mean, it is obvious, is it not, that mainstream politicians of all the mainstream parties, I think, don't want to undermine our democracy, don't want to take it in the direction of Trump's America like Nigel Farage.
So you would never do a deal with Nigel Farage?
Well, I think no one would expect me to do that, and I don't want to do it, and we won't do it.
Would you ever do a deal with Keir Starmer?
Look, when it comes to deals with other parties beyond reform, let's wait till see the result of the next election. No, here's the point. Liberal Democrats believe in getting that election whenever it comes.
It seems pretty clear to me that what you're saying is that you feel as a political leader, you have a moral responsibility to try to keep reform out of power.
If Liberal Democrats keep winning seats and build on our best result for 100 years at the last general election, we can stop reform by ourselves. We can deprive them of the seats that they would need to form a majority.
Does that involve electoral pacts with other progressive parties, though?
No, we didn't have pacts last time. We're not going to have pacts in the future.
Refusing to rule out deals with Labour, Ed Davey also sees opportunity in attacking Donald Trump in a way his political opponents can't or won't. Tapping into anti-Trump sentiment in Britain, the Lib Dem leaders also criticised Trump's former close ally, Elon Musk.
Do you respect the rule of law?
Yes, I do.
OK, the reason I ask that is that you called Elon Musk on Sky News a criminal yesterday, but isn't it irresponsible for a leader to call someone a criminal when there's no charges, no investigation? You're making libelous remarks about another public figure. Would you like to retract that comment?
No, and I'll tell you why. He has clearly broken the law, he and X. Before he took over Twitter and renamed it X...
So you're happy to call him a criminal?
Well, yeah, there's evidence, people can go and find it for themselves, of X allowing adverts of videos of child sexual abuse, of grooming, of self-harm, which clearly breaks those rules.
Are you worried he's going to sue you?
Well, if he does, he sues me, and let's see how he fares, because I don't think he'll win.
More in Common polling found that more than 60% of voters thought your stunts during the general election are not appropriate now when the nation faces so many challenges. Do you hear that you need to be perhaps a bit more serious, that it's not a joke?
Well, I don't think politics is a joke. And when I did those stunts in the election, I said, you know, you don't have to take yourself seriously, you take the voters' concerns seriously.
So you're going to lead the Lib Dems into the next general election?
Ed Davey may be known for his stunts, but this week he's delivering a serious message, using his conference to warn of the populist wave he believes is coming to British shores, as he, like other main parties, tries to turn the tide on reform's surge. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Bournemouth.
Well, let's stay with politics. And Nigel Farage has said he would overhaul the UK's immigration system if he became Prime Minister. The Reform UK party leader revealed plans to scrap indefinite leave to remain visas, as well as make welfare only available to British citizens.
We will not only say that these people do not qualify for indefinite leave to remain, we will abolish indefinite leave to remain as a category in this country. We are not the world's food bank. It is not for us to provide welfare for people coming in from all over the world. The 800,000 people that will get indefinite leave to remain unless this policy is revoked tend to be young, tend to be low-skilled. They are going to be a huge burden on the state.
Well, our political correspondent Rob Powell joins us now from Westminster. Rob, a major change promised here by Reform. So what reaction have we seen?
Yeah, it's a big, brash and eye-catching announcement, and it would have profound and far-reaching implications. What you're potentially talking about is people that have got indefinite leave to remain, have potentially been in the country for years, maybe even decades, had expected to have been able to stay for the rest of their life, essentially told that if they can't meet the new visa requirements, then they'll have to go. Now, indefinite leave to remain you can get at the moment after being here for 5 years. The government's looking at changing that until the 10-year mark, but it's consulting on that. But you essentially have people that are seeing the rights that they're given when they come to the country retrospectively gone back over and changed. So you could see how this couldn't be done probably without coming out of the European Convention on Human Rights, but Reform say that that's fine, they'll do that. They say they'll pass primary legislation if that's what's needed as well. They have also laid out plans to mean that anyone cannot claim benefits or welfare unless they are a British citizen. It all provokes several questions on welfare. I guess there is the risk that people could go destitute if they aren't able to work but aren't able to claim benefits. On indefinite leave to remain, what happens if someone has been in the country, has got children, has got family, potentially has children who were born here and are British citizens, but they don't meet the visa requirements? Do they have to go? What about pensioners? What about businesses that rely on workers on lower salaries that could be potentially under the salary threshold reform bring in? What could be the impact on them? What could be the impact on social care that relies on labour in that salary bracket as well? A lot of these questions, or variations of them, were asked to Nigel Farage and Zia Youssef, his policy chief, today. But you got the sense that they weren't necessarily interested in going right down into that detail. I sensed that Nigel Farage sort of let the cat out of the bag when one of my Sky colleagues, Mario Aurora, asked him the pensioner question. And he essentially said, look, the main objective of this press conference today is to alert people to the Boris wave, essentially all the people that came in after the immigration rules were changed post-Brexit. So this was using policy as a campaigning tool, painting the picture in big, bright, bold colours, essentially. It wasn't necessarily about sort of oven-ready, to use the phrase, policy ready to go if they moved into Downing Street. But this is also really demonstrating the luxury of opposition. If they do get into power, they might find that the doing part is a lot harder than the saying.
Rob, thank you. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we will take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview tonight, joined by The Sun's political editor, Jack Elsom, and The Guardian's deputy political editor, Jessica Elgott. Welcome to both of you. And among the stories, we will be discussing this on the front page of The Guardian, the headline on that very story Rob was talking about: outrage as Farage threatens mass deportation of legal immigrants. Back with that and plenty more after this.